All right, what's going on, everyone? So it looks like Iran is digging in. There's been no movement, no progress in the peace talks or ceasefire negotiations. Instead, we have reports that Iran is stepping up their mining of the Strait of Hormuz, which is not great, exactly. I mean, yesterday we had 3 different incidents where the IRGC opened fire on commercial vessels moving through the Strait of Hormuz, and 2 of them were taken over. In fact, Iran released this footage here of the IRGC Navy taking one of those 2 vessels. This is staged, like it's the real ship that is now in the custody of the IRGC, like 100% it was taken. We know that for sure. Just based off of where these cameras were and kind of how this clip comes together, it looks like maybe they took the vessel, moved it off to the side, and then said, hey, you know what we should do? Put together a good hype video showing how we did this. But either way, 2 vessels taken by the IRGC yesterday, kind of Iran showcasing their version of control of the Strait of Hormuz. Interestingly enough, this was brought up to the White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt yesterday, where they said, does President Trump view this as a violation of the ceasefire? And she said no. She said it's not viewed as a violation because these ships that were taken and fired upon yesterday by the IRGC were not Israeli ships and they were not American ships. Personally, I don't think that sends a great message in terms of freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. And now on top of that, we've got a number of mines, additional mines making their way into that waterway. Washington Post yesterday said, quote, it could take 6 months to fully clear the Strait of Hormuz of mines deployed by the Iranian military, and any such operation is unlikely to be carried out until the U.S. war with Iran ends. The Pentagon has informed Congress, an assessment that means the conflict's economic impact could extend late into this year or beyond. Real quick there. So they're saying once it's wrapped up, there's no more fighting, and the shooting has stopped, it is a 6-month peacetime operation to remove those mines. Demining is crazy work. Again, in a peacetime environment, it's wild. So the idea that this could take 6 months after the last shot is fired just gives you an idea of how long this could go on. They say a senior Defense Department official shared the estimate during a classified briefing Tuesday for members of the House Armed Services Committee. Lawmakers were told that Iran may have emplaced 20 or more mines in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Pentagon was asked for comment on this, and Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said, quote, by deciding to publish these false claims, the Washington Post made clear that they care more about advancing an agenda than truth. Now, it's not just the Washington Post that's putting this information out. Axios today had another report where they say the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy laid more mines in the Strait of Hormuz this week, so during the ceasefire, according to a U.S. official. And that shouldn't be a surprise. We have U.S. officials talking about how we are using this time period, this ceasefire, to restock our ammunition and move additional assets into the region. In fact, just today, we got notification that the USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group has entered the CENTCOM area of responsibility. So we are doing that, and we understand and kind of expected that Iran would be doing something similar. Turns out one way that they went about kind of restocking and preparing for the next phase of this fight is laying mines in the strait. The Axios piece continues by saying the U.S. military detected the Iranian mine laying operation and has been tracking it closely. Before this apparent uptick, experts estimated that fewer than 100 mines had been deployed by Iran. So now we've got the Washington Post and Axios talking to this. And then President Trump today, it's very hard to take his statements and apply what is happening or what is going to happen in the future. But we sometimes can read between the lines and get an idea of whether or not other reporting is accurate or false. In this case, it's President Trump, I think, kind of verifying that there are a number of Iranian mines that have been laid. So President Trump, in a statement earlier today, said, quote, I have ordered the United States Navy to shoot and kill any boat, small boats though they may be, that is putting mines in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. There is to be no hesitation. Additionally, our minesweepers are clearing the strait right now. I'm hereby ordering that activity to continue, but at a tripled up level. Now, my understanding is that we may have one dedicated minesweeper in the CENTCOM AOR. We have a couple other ships that have minesweeping capabilities, but in terms of that dedicated asset, I think we have 3 or 4, maybe. Don't quote me on this. I need to dig into it a little bit further, but I believe those have been sent off to, just before the conflict started, either Japan or the United States. So in terms of tripling up our minesweeping capabilities right now, there's a couple things to keep in mind. One, are the assets there? I don't believe they are. But the second one is we're not moving naval assets through the Strait of Hormuz. Like the first day of the ceasefire, I think we kind of did a show of force in a sense of pushing a couple destroyers through. But since then, there's no indications that the U.S. Navy has been operating in the Strait. Again, yesterday, hostile shots fired. IRGC Navy boats moving through there, opening fire on commercial vessels. I don't know that the Navy's moving in there right now. So the tripling of the minesweeping would be a pretty significant naval operation if we decide to kick that off. Now, of course, this whole topic is around the idea that we're going to be able to choke off the Iranian economy and get them back to the negotiating table to accept the U.S.'s terms on their nuclear program, their missiles, their proxies, whatever else it might be. That's kind of the plan that we're pursuing right now. But the Wall Street Journal just ran a piece saying the air war in Iran has given way to a crippling stalemate in Hormuz. They say the conflict with Iran has entered a damaging new phase, a crippling limbo between war and peace that leaves the Strait of Hormuz closed and the prospect of escalation looming. They quote Ali Vaez, the director of the Iran project at the International Crisis Group, saying, quote, neither side is likely to fold under economic pressure anytime soon. Personally, I'm nervous about that. We've talked about it in recent videos. The idea that economic measures alone would be able to bring the IRGC to the negotiating table to give up power and give up what they view as the only things that are protecting them from a U.S. or Israeli invasion and kind of toppling of their regime. That's a lot of economic pressure. And I get how it looks on paper, but when we're talking about the survival of a regime for these people, I'm just not entirely sure that it's going to be sanctions. It's going to be shutting off the oil revenue that is really going to do that. Maybe. I'd like to be proven wrong on that one, but I do think it's a pretty significant ask. And if we're not going to be able to make a deal through these economic measures and trying to force Iran back to the negotiating table, we're likely headed back to hostilities. In fact, there's a couple indications today as well that that's the direction we're headed. But first, a quick thank you to the sponsor of today's video, CyberGhost VPN. Look, I spend a lot of time online in this line of work, and the older I get, the more I realize how much of that time is being tracked, logged, and then sold to whoever wants it. Like, no questions asked. Seriously, that's a problem, isn't it? That's why I partnered with the sponsor of today's video, CyberGhost VPN. CyberGhost encrypts your traffic and reroutes it through secure servers in over 100 countries. So nobody knows what you're doing online, not even CyberGhost themselves, which is great for someone like me. You know, they get in, they see this browsing history, they're going to find out how many times a day I have to ask Google about the time differences, not just across the country, but around the world. It's a little bit embarrassing, but that's my burden to bear. Now, CyberGhost works on all major devices and operating systems, Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and you can protect up to 7 different devices at once, so the whole household can be covered. You can also unlock more than 40 different streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime from different regions just by switching your virtual location. Now, right now, you can go to cyberghostvpn.com/PrestonStewartYT and get 4 months free, which works out to about $2.03 a month. That's 84% off. There's also a 45-day money-back guarantee, so there's literally zero risk. Click the link, check it out, and thank you to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring today's video. So as I mentioned earlier, the George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group has now entered the CENTCOM area of responsibility. They are joining the Lincoln and the Ford Carrier Strike Groups. And when we had a chance to talk with Representative Smith a few weeks ago, talking about what are you watching, right? Because there's a lot of different statements coming in from every direction. And he said, I'm watching the military buildup. And what he pointed to was every time that President Trump has built up military assets in a region, he has taken military action. So what we have seen since the ceasefire went into place is a lot of assets continuing to move into the Middle East. Nothing has left. So that probably does point to the idea that, I mean, again, it's just prudent planning to have those assets there should the negotiations not work. But based off of President Trump's past actions, we should probably assume that there is going to be a continuation of hostilities at some point in the near future. And we're seeing similar messaging out of Israel, more aggressive, I would argue. The Defense Minister Katz gave a speech earlier today where he said Israel is prepared to renew the war against Iran. Quote, we are waiting for a green light from the United States, first and foremost, to complete the elimination of the Khamenei dynasty, the initiator of the annihilation plan against Israel, as well as the successors of the Iranian terror regime's leadership. And in addition, to return Iran to the age of darkness and stone by blowing up the main energy and electricity facilities and crushing the national economic infrastructure. I mean, that's kind of in line with the threats that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth had been making in recent days, right? Strike a deal or else you're going to face destruction like you've never seen before. The end of a civilization, I think, as President Trump put it. So Israel, a lot of indications that they're kind of chomping at the bit to get back after it here. A job half done is probably how it's being presented, or how I'm seeing it presented in a lot of Israeli circles right now. Now, President Trump is saying that one of the issues today is that we don't really have anybody to negotiate with in Iran. He's saying there's these fractures inside of the Iranian leadership. One side's not listening to the other, and this led to a lot of interesting reports that have not been verified. All right, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, Fox News talked about some major coup where the IRGC had placed all of the civilian leadership under house arrest. There's no indication that that happened. A few hours ago, there was a report that the Iranian parliament chairman, Halabaif, resigned from the negotiating team following a, quote, intervention by the IRGC. That also has not been verified, and sources inside of Iran are saying, what are you even talking about? So not entirely clear that fracture, we don't know, right? There could be a massive fracture inside of the Iranian leadership, and there's a lot of reasons to suggest that could be the case based off of what they've experienced and the pressure that they're under right now. But we are also seeing a lot of reports that end up not necessarily being accurate. So it's hard to have an understanding exactly of what's going on inside of the Iranian regime right now. But one solution to this was floated in the Washington Post by columnist Mark Thiessen earlier today. And I wouldn't normally just grab like an opinion piece and say, well, here's what could happen, except President Trump reposted this and said, like, yeah, this is absolutely what I could do. So it's at least got his attention as he starts putting together a plan for the future of the Iran war. Thiessen says, quote, if the Iranian regime is really fractured between a faction that wants a deal and a faction that does not, there is a simple solution: kill the faction that does not. He said if Iran continues to refuse President Trump's terms, he should give Admiral Cooper 14 days. He should maintain 14 days to continue military operations. He should maintain the blockade, strangling Iran economically while the U.S. finishes the job militarily. Together with Israel, he should eliminate the Iranian leaders resisting a deal. He should execute Admiral Cooper's plan to open the Strait of Hormuz by force to all traffic except Iranian ships, and then he should issue Iran's remaining leaders a final ultimatum: capitulate, or the U.S. will destroy Harg Island, through which 90% of Iran's oil flows, delivering a permanent blow to the Iranian military, which depends on that revenue to sustain its power. All right, so a couple quick thoughts there. First off, the idea that we can kind of kill our way out of this, I don't know. That's a big ask. It sounds easy, but that's very, very challenging, right? You're not talking about a number of soldiers. You're not talking about, eliminating the Navy, for instance, or removing the Air Force, or even killing every soldier. You're talking about the leadership, the ideology in the IRGC. I don't have a lot of confidence that it's a number of people killed that will get us to that point. I just don't know that there's very many historical examples where we have effectively killed our way to regime change, right? There's probably a lot more. I mean, what's coming to mind for me, and I know I'm probably stuck in these comparisons, but Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, we tried to kind of kill our way to put those groups out of existence, and it hasn't worked. So I'm hard-pressed to look at that as any sort of short-term viable solution in Iran. And the second part, taking out Harg Island, again, the focus there is economic pain on Iran. If this blockade continues for much longer, it's going to pretty well shut down the entire Iranian economy. All right, so if the entire Iranian economy is shut down and there's no revenues coming in, I'm not sure that taking out Harg Island, is it a little bit of salt on the wound, I guess, right? Like it sets them back even further into the future. But if the economy being completely shut down doesn't move the needle, I don't know that Harg Island in 1, 2, 3 weeks from now is going to be the thing that just forces the remaining IRGC leadership to say, that was okay. Now we're ready to negotiate. So it's kind of the spot we're in right now, I would say. I mean, we're continuing to try, it seems, the negotiated route. Not a lot of progress in that regard. So it does look increasingly like we're going to see a return to hostilities here before too awful long. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. And hey, don't forget to click the link in the description and grab the special CyberGhost VPN discount available exclusively to our viewers. It keeps your data safe while you browse and unlocks all blocked content online, all for just $2.03 a month. It's completely risk-free, so check it out today.